Martin. Very good morning to you, Martin.
Morning, Matt.
What would you like to say on this?
I find this subject an insult to my intelligence. To suggest that it's irrational to have a fear of something that poses a threat to you is unfair. It's an unfair thing to say that people are being irrational if they were to say move because somebody looks like people that we've seen doing harmful things to innocent people. I'm a black person and I have a beard. I get mistaken for looking like a Muslim. If a person was to maybe cross the road or move seats because of the thought that they've got in their head that I could be one of these extremists, I'm not about to blame them for having their thought. That is a rational thought that they're having, because if they want to hedge their bets and decide that they're safer to keep away from somebody like that, that's their lookout for them to look out for themselves. And how dare we judge them because of something that happens within a faith that has nothing to do with our culture, and then we're making out that they're the bad guys. Really, the bad guys are people that keep defending the faith and having callers like what you had up that deny completely about what goes on in their faith.
Let me make 2 points in reply to you, Martin, because you raise a very important question. And actually, it's a question I've been raising and I've been wanting people to talk about this morning. So in a sense, I'm glad that you've brought it up. And I'd say this to you. If I go on an aeroplane, I quite often get very, very scared because I have what I would describe as an irrational fear of flying. But I know, that the chances that I'll die in an aeroplane are very, very small. So in that sense, it's irrational. On the other hand, you look down, you're 30,000 feet up, and it's pretty scary, and it's tempting to feel it's rational.
When
you say logical, you might think on first analysis it's understandable, but it's not logical or rational, because if you think about it, I've got so much of a higher chance of dying by travelling around as I do quite a lot in a car than I do in a plane. Now, when you start to introduce it, I'll definitely let you have the final say, Martin. Let me make this point, though. When you start to introduce other human beings here, and you say, maybe very magnanimously, that you're prepared for other people to move away from you on public transport, you understand that we shouldn't condemn those people. But actually put yourself in the position of the Muslim man with the beard. And it's even worse for them than you because you're not a Muslim. You're going about your daily business in your own city, the city perhaps where you were born, and you're doing nothing wrong. You've never done anything wrong in your life. You're one of over 1 million Muslims in London, over 1 million Muslims, and 3 nutters go and do something terrible. 3 losers go and do something terrible in London Bridge, and because of that, people have a fear of you. I would say to you, there's a little bit of me that understands it, but then we have to check it. We have to check our reactions and remember to be rational.
Yeah, but whether we have to check it or not, who cares about that innocent Muslim man's feelings?
How can you say that, Martin? Why do you say that? Who cares about the
feelings? Because my feelings are more important to me than some stranger's feelings. If
That's
he
a bit
wants
selfish,
to believe
isn't
in a
it?
faith that well, so what? It's selfish for them to think that we have to accept their views which are allowing innocent people to get killed.
Well, hang on, because that brings me to the second point. You're saying their views. You can't seriously be sitting there on a Sunday morning calling a national radio station and equating your average Muslim sitting on a bus, his views or her views, with the sort of person who goes around killing people on a Saturday night on London Bridge. These are two very different things, and you're not separating them out. Say again?
Have you read the Quran?
I've been reading the Quran, yes. Yes, I've been reading the Quran.
When you read the Quran and you see the views that are in the Quran, you can almost flip any page and put your finger down and see some of the evil that it calls for towards non-believers. It's not a wild accusation to make that the views that are held, if you believe what it says in the Quran, are terrible views to have. And I don't blame people for being judgmental of people that want to defend that religion over defending innocent people in our country that are being killed.
Have you read parts of the Bible, Martin?
I'm not defending the Bible, so I don't care about what it says in the Bible.
Fair enough. That's fair enough. What I'll say to you on Islam is I have been reading the Quran, and there is some pretty violent rhetoric, I think, there. But the whole point of being a Muslim is that the Quran is part of that, and it's about how you interpret it. And if you talk to your average Muslim, they will tell you it is a religion of peace, and there is no place for Muslims who go around killing men, women or children. You have the final say, Martin.
Well, if you think that that's what it says in the Quran, you're sorely mistaken, because it does not have anything to do with peace unless you're a Muslim. Any single quote that you find in there about saving lives, it is followed up by unless it's a non-believer. So to say that is a complete lie and a fabrication of the truth.
Martin, stay there. Stay there. Let's bring in Abbas and he can respond to you. Abbas in Redbridge, what do you say to what Martin's being said? He's saying that it's not a religion of peace unless you're a Muslim. What do you say to that, Abbas?
Well, let me defeat what Martin is saying with logic and reason, because he likes logic and reason. Islam is the fastest growing religion in Europe, and it's amongst, the Gallup poll said, the Mori poll, said amongst average age of 27, 7 years of investigating and learning about Islam, and the average qualification for those people is postgraduate, educated, successful people. Now, if you truly preach what you said, Martin, and I'd like you to be specific, give me one verse, because I'll deal with it, just one verse where it says you can kill innocent people or the disbeliever, any disbeliever.
Okay, Abbas, you've asked the question. Martin, how do you respond to that?
So we'll just use the one quote that the last caller brought up, where it says it's against humanity if you kill any human, but then after that it says unless they are a person of mischief, and then later in the Qur'an it describes a person of mischief as being a non-believer.
That's completely a fabrication used
no,
by
it isn't.
right-wing extremists.
You can say it is. Anyone can go and get the Qur'an now and read that themselves.
Let me finish. It said
well, only if you're going to be honest.
It's a view that is shared commonly by extremist Muslims and the far right, like yourself. The problem that we have at the moment, and this is the frustration for Muslims at the moment, and I'm very frustrated, because it's perfectly viable if you slander one person, which is what you're doing to 1.6 billion people at the moment. You'll go to court and you'll get done. But people like you come on the radio, you come on the media, and you make stuff up. You lie about stuff.
Abbas,
it's convenient.
We're very late for a break. Stay there because Martin's had more of a say. I'll come back to you after the break, and I've got a couple of questions for you myself. So Abbas, you stay there if you will. Martin, you have a final response to Abbas, please.
It's fine for him to say stuff's being made up, but anyone can go and read it themselves and see it's not being made up. I've got no axe to grind. Why would I make it up for? I'm telling you facts that it says in it that you can read for yourself.
Would you describe yourself as far right, Martin, as Abbas described you?
Not really. I just read things for what it says. There's no interpreting. It says it in black and white.
Martin, thank you. That's Martin in Wood Green. I'll come back to Abbas as promised. A couple of questions for him myself. 0345 6060 973. Not surprised that this is such a big topic of conversation for us this morning. I'm Matt Stadlen, LBC, leading Britain's conversation 10 to 4.
This is LBC with Matt Stadlen. Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850.
A little later in the show, I will be speaking to someone who witnessed the attack last weekend, and shortly I'll be also speaking to Zabe in Ilford. But right now I've still got Abbas on the line in Redbridge. Abbas, just to give us a bit of context, you yourself are Muslim.
I am indeed, yes.
And you would condemn out of hand the attacks that we've seen in this country over the past few weeks and months?
As do 99.999% of us, absolutely.
And let me just ask you this. Now, I've got onto a website. As I say, I've been doing a bit of research, reading some of the Qur'an, and there are some quite violent passages, but you will tell me, no doubt, that these have to be taken in context. I've got onto a website, and I'm just looking at one or two examples. Tell me if I'm wrong about this, but it says 9.5, and these could be, because it's a website I've just Googled, these could be completely false, but you can help me. It says here, when the sacred months, quoting the Qur'an, when the sacred months have passed, then kill the mushrikin, is that the right way of pronouncing it?
That's correct, yeah.
Wherever you find them. Capture them, besiege them, lie in wait for them in each and every ambush, but if they repent and perform the prayers and give zakat, then leave their way free. That seems to me to be very violent indeed.
What's the following verse, Matt?
I haven't got it here because it's no doubt been taken out of context.
First of all, it says, the context for this particular event was a 7-year treaty when the Muslims were evicted out of their homes, their land was stolen, their possessions were stolen. Nobody was allowed to marry those people who converted to Islam, and they were being killed for 7 years. No order came to fight the mushrikeen, those particular mushrikeen that it refers to. After 7 years, the order came, you may kill them wherever you find them. However, there's a subsequent verse to that which says, however, if they wish peace, give them peace and escort them to a land of safety. You see, the context is what is absolutely important when it comes to quoting something. And the websites that you've probably gone on are like Answering Islam and, Christianity Against Islam or whatever. That's exactly what they do. And that's the frustration for Muslims. Because, as I said to you, you can slander an individual and you go to court and you'll pay heavily for that. But you can slander an entire faith of 1.6 billion. What I would like to say is just one snippet that I just mentioned to your last caller, which is that if Islam truly preached those things, do you honestly believe that in intellectual circles, people who are postgraduate educated, my wife is doing a PhD, she's ethnically Jewish, she converted to Islam 2 years before I met her on the basis of studying the religion because she was intrigued, right? And for her to go onto like Facebook and places like that and have people say things like Hitler got the idea Hitler had was right, but he just got the wrong race. It's the Muslims that should have been annihilated. Can you imagine how hurtful that is to her? Her grandmother is a Holocaust survivor, right? And she's saying, you know what, this is another Holocaust coming because I've converted to Islam and now I might have to go through. And that's the sort of worry that the people have in this country. Now, it might be a bit exaggerated and it might be a little bit far-fetched, but these sort of comments are so hurtful because they are slanderous and they are not, the context is completely forgotten.
And I get that, Abbas. So what would you say, or how would you explain these imbeciles who think they're going to paradise by killing innocent people or killing anyone?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question because, Matt, there are countless studies. I have family who work for anti-terror, anti-extremist departments working with the Home Office. I have a good friend who used to work for the police force under anti-terrorism, anti-extremism. There's a study by Professor Robert Pape of the University of Chicago who studied every suicide bombing from the 80s up to the mid-90s, over 400 cases. And all of these people are saying that, unfortunately, whether we like it or we don't, foreign policy has a huge impact on how these people are recruited, how they're brainwashed. I recently interviewed Mike Haynes, because I'd like to do more as a Muslim myself, to put videos out. We have a group called EFDawah group on YouTube, and we're trying to put out videos to hopefully stop young minds being manipulated by these extremists. And I interviewed a guy who was nearly radicalized with Mike Haynes. Mike Haynes is the brother of David Haynes, who was slaughtered, who was killed by ISIS in Syria. And I interviewed them on the basis to try to get to the bottom of what was happening, Mike's own investigations over 3 or 4 years about Islam, how it's changed his mind about Islam, because he actually went out there and he met people. And the one thing that always comes out consistently is that our foreign policy has a huge impact.
Which is not, of course, remotely to justify any of the barbarism that we see.
Absolutely not.
Abbas, look, thank you so much. And just because we've got so many people trying to squeeze in, I'll leave it there. Really good to hear your voice this morning.